We'll monitor our comments then. Keep it about snow. I'm just kidding.
And then just a housekeeping thing, we do have Nikki Jensen from Office of Medical Cannabis will be taking notes for us.
First meeting since when? Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Yeah, I think the last meeting was, what was it?
I think it was, wasn't it February, or I'm sorry, July 2020 or something like that?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Marin's shaking her head.
Well, whoever's going to move those minutes has to have been at that meeting. So anybody here, raise your hands. What's not there? Okay, good.
Awesome.
Thank you. Well, Sheriff, maybe you can do it.
Morning, Sheriff Clark.
Good morning, sir. I'm going over a quote to buy a washing machine for a jail today. So they're not cheap. About $9,600 if anybody is looking for commercial washing machine.
Wow.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Kind of need it though. You don't want to not have that. That would be
Well,
bad.
it's either that or you take it to the local laundromat, and I don't think I got enough staff to do that. So we'll go with buying one, I think.
I think so.
All right, is somebody tracking? We got people coming in and out. Looks like we still have a significant number of our members not present. But Representative Ellison, would you like to? I'm game to get started. We've got seems it's been the first meeting in a while. We've got I think we have to do introductions, and it's going to take a little bit longer than we traditionally would. So I think we should go. We should start rolling with at least introductions, and as people come on board, we can have them do their introductions. But let's get rolling. So if with that, everybody, we'd like to kick off the bring to and open up the Task Force on Medical Cannabis Therapeutic Research. This is the task force. It hasn't met since July of 2020. We thought it was important to get together, both Representative Edelson and I, and I think everybody involved here, with the legislation we passed in the last legislative session in 2021, to really talk about and make sure to give everybody an opportunity, everybody involved with the legislation that we passed, an opportunity to let us know, and let everybody know that we're ready. Get an update from everybody involved in that process, from MDH, rulemaking. I think we're hearing good things. We just want to make sure that we're going to have that affirmed before we get into March, and then I think the rest of it is really talking about a variety of known issues that have been in existence since the formation of the program, and either as a result of the 2021 legislation and or those long-standing issues. And that's what we'd like to kind of wrap the last half of the meeting and have a great conversation about known issues and what we can do early on in the legislative session. So that's the overall. I'll start by introducing myself. State Senator Mark Cran, represent Senate District 32, Chisago and Iceni counties. And so let's just go down the list. Representative Ellison, you want to go next? And then we'll just go down the list based in order of the Medical Cannabis Task Force that I have sitting in front of me.
Oh, well then I don't actually have the list in front of me, so maybe you'll just be calling up people. Heather Edelson, I represent Edina at the Capitol in my second term. Happy to be here. So Senator, go ahead and.
Excellent. We have next on the list, we have Representative Nolan West. I see Nolan.
Hello, I'm Nolan West. I represent Blaine. This is my third term and my first of this type of meeting.
Excellent. And Minority Leader Melissa Franzen, Senate. I don't see Senator Franzen on, so we'll go past. Next, we have anybody from Representative NC, Commissioner Malcolm. Anybody represent Commissioner Malcolm?
Commissioner Malcolm was going to try and hop on for the first 15 minutes or so, but as you know, okay, she's got a lot going on right now.
Oh, she's excellent. Here now. I see Commissioner Malcolm on now. And Senator Franzen also just joined, so maybe after Commissioner Malcolm goes.
Excellent. Oh, I see.
Yeah, I had a hard time getting on.
Commissioner Malcolm, if you could do give a quick, we're just doing quick introductions. It's been such a long time since everybody's
Good morning, Senator. Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Senator Franzen, if you'd like to do brief introduction now that you have access.
Yes, good morning, Senator Melissa Lopez Franzen. I serve on this task force, and I think this is the first time we actually meet since I've been appointed to be on it. So I'm glad to be here.
First time since July of 2020. So, and I think for Human Services, we've got Tara Holt. Ms. Holt?
Good morning. My name is Tara Holt. I represent the Behavioral Health Division, and I do coordination of DHS substance abuse initiatives across state agency, including the Opioid Epidemic Response Advisory Council with Senator Cran. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Ms. Holt. I don't see Commissioner Harrington anywhere. Any representative for Commissioner Harrington? Nope. All right. And then on the consumer patient representative side on Canvas, Ms. Schroeder?
Maren Schroeder. I am a patient. I am down in Stewartville, Minnesota, which is just south of Rochester.
Excellent. Thanks, Ms. Schroeder. And Aaron Chase. Are you on, Aaron? Oh, there.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Erin Chase. I'm here as a patient of the program.
Excellent. Do we have, and then we also have a couple of patients under 18. Do we have Jessica Hauser?
Good morning. I'm Jessica Hauser, mom of Wyatt, and I live in Woodbury.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Hauser. And Katie Kennedy. No, Katie Kennedy? All right. On the healthcare provider side, we've got Gwen Verocha. Please help me.
Hi.
Sorry for.
Hi, it's nice to be here. I'm Gwen Verkota. I'm a board certified family nurse practitioner and nursing practitioner faculty as well.
Thank you, Ms. Verkota. And Mary Gilbert. No, Mary? Bruce Bostrom.
Yeah, I'm Bruce Bostrom. I'm a pediatric oncologist for Children's in Minnesota.
Thank you. Ann Hoekstra.
Hi, I'm Ann. I'm a clinical pharmacist with a board certification in geriatric pharmacy. I'm from Plymouth, Minnesota, and I'm enjoying being inside right now.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Hoekstra. And then we have a law enforcement representative, John Swenson. No, I don't see Mr. Swenson. We do have Mr. Clark.
Good morning, Chris Kalk from my Santee County Sheriff's Office, representing the Minnesota Sheriff's Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. And Mr. Peters, Brian Peters. I don't see him on either. I do see my district's represented really well with one of my sheriffs, Chris Clark, and we now have our county attorney of Chisago, Janet Ryder.
Good morning, Janet Ryder. I'm the Chisago County Attorney, as you said, and I am here as a representative of the Minnesota County Attorneys Association. And this is my second meeting of this after having been appointed to this task force.
Thanks, Ms. Ryder. And then we have from the Substance Abuse Disorder Treatment Representatives, Charles Resnikoff.
Hey, my name is Charlie. I'm an internal medicine and addiction medicine doctor at Hennepin Healthcare. Thanks, happy to be here.
Excellent, thank you. We have Dean Gilbertson. Don't see Dean. I do see Charles Hilger.
Good morning, Chuck Hilger. I represent substance use providers. Specifically, I have experience in the medication-assisted treatment arena, and I'm the vice president of the association called March for substance use providers as well.
Thanks, Ms. Hilger, or Mr. Hilger, and we'll always welcome a fellow frog towner. So, so with that, has anybody joined that is a member of the task force that we didn't call out? Had they joined when we started introductions? Oh, I see Mr. Peters. Brian, could you do an introduction?
Hey, good morning, Senator. Yes, sir. Good morning. My name is Brian Peters. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Peters. Anyone else join that is a member of the commission or the task force? Excellent. Well, we've completed the introductions and welcomes, and so what we'd like to do is only you members, we'd seek a motion to approve the minutes from the last task force meeting, which was July of 2020. Anybody want to make that motion?
I can move. Sheriff Colt can move.
Okay, I'll move.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Koch. And so Sheriff Koch moves to adopt the minutes or accept the minutes. Any comments, questions, or discussion in regards to the minutes? It's been so long, you're probably in the historical archives already. No comments, questions, or concerns with that. Mr. Koch moves that we accept the minutes from July of 2020. And all those in favor say aye. Well, hold on. Turn your cameras on, turn your audio on, and indicate with aye. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, great. The minutes have been accepted. Great. So now we have, we're going to move into the general program portion of it. Everybody has the agenda. So what we'd like to do is get an overview of what's new. So we've got the Minnesota Department of Health, Office of Medical Cannabis, and is that Tyra? Ms. Holt, are you going to provide that, or Ms.
That'll
Holt?
be me. This is
Okay.
Chris Stokes, and I'm the director for the Office of Medical Cannabis. And I just have a few slides that I'm going to share.
Excellent. The floor is yours, Ms. Stokes.
Okay, and are you guys seeing the slides? Excellent. Okay, so just a broad program overview, just to remind everyone that we are currently limited to 2 vertically integrated manufacturers. So what that means is that each of those 2 manufacturers is responsible for and dispensary functions. Each manufacturer is allowed 1 cultivation and production location and up to 8 dispensaries. Our program, Minnesota's program, does require that there is pharmacist dispensing. And then the types of medicine currently available are, we have pills or capsules, liquid, oils, topicals, tinctures, lozenge, and then flower will be available March 1st of this year. And then edibles was recently added as well. And in terms of edibles, we will be going through an administrative rulemaking process for edibles as well. We're just currently in sort of the mapping phase of planning that process out, but you can expect to see more on that soon. So our current locations for cannabis patient centers or dispensaries are located here. In addition to these locations, we have a Mankato location that will be opening very soon, and a Coon Rapids location that will be opening soon as well. And that will bring us up to 15, which means we'll have one more location that we expect to be opened in the first quarter of 2022. So qualifying medical conditions, I won't read through all of these. I think most of you are likely familiar with this list, but just as a reminder, the items on the left-hand column, the column that starts with cancer, those were all included in the initial statute in 2014. And the conditions located on the right that have a date next to them, those were added through the program's petition process. So those were brought to us through, well, it can be through anyone. I can submit a petition for consideration. So this is a little bit of our program data that we collect. This is looking at our patient population. What are the most common qualifying medical conditions? And you can see that the vast majority of patients are qualified for chronic pain or intractable pain. And then PTSD is the 3rd most common qualifying condition. So just a refresher on patient requirements. Patients must be a Minnesota resident with a qualifying medical condition. They must enroll in the patient registry and agree that the data in the registry can be used for our aggregate reports and research. There is a $200 annual enrollment fee. That is reduced to $50 if they're receiving medical assistance. And then the cost of medical cannabis continues to be out of pocket. There's not insurance coverage for the cost of medical cannabis. We did contract with an audit firm in 2019, and they did an analysis of patient spend. And so the average 30-day supply is about $316 per patient. It really varies depending on the particular condition and each patient's individual situation, but on average, patients are spending $316 for a 30-day supply. Active patients in the registry, we are at about almost 27,000 active patients currently. And then the makeup of those patients, it's about 50-50 male, female. And as you'll see on the age range, it's really, most of our patients are in the 36 to 64 age group. Healthcare practitioners, as a reminder, doctors, physician assistants, and advanced practice RNs can be certifiers in our program. Participation is completely voluntary. They are certifying a diagnosis, so they're simply telling us that yes, indeed, this patient does have one of the qualifying medical conditions. They agree to provide ongoing treatment. They agree to allow MDH access to health records if we need them, and they agree to recertify patients annually. So healthcare practitioners right now, we're just over 2,000 active healthcare practitioners that are certifying in the program. And then I wanted to share with you all, this is right off the MDH website. We do have a whole host of information that's regularly updated. So anytime you want to check weekly counts, registration data for patients, caregivers, healthcare practitioners, we update that information weekly on our website. And then we do have new in the last 6 months or so, we've added a medical cannabis dashboard with data as well. And those slides that you previously saw came from our dashboard. So you can check that out at any time as well. Additionally, we have a variety of reports that we do regularly. So we do have a patient experience survey that we issue to patients, and we report on perceived benefits, side effects. We do have adverse event reporting. All of that information can be found on our website as well. We also do condition-specific reports. So anytime we add a new condition, we do track those patients specifically to better understand their experience with that particular condition in our program. So we right now have condition-specific reports for PTSD and intractable pain. We also have a couple reports underway right now. We expect to issue a report on autism and obstructive sleep apnea in 2022. Just an example of a PTSD report. We do try to get the word out there and do some distribution of the results of our surveys and reports. And we continue to have a desire to contribute to the literature so that as we learn, we share that information out. And we partner with a variety of researchers. This is an example of an oncologist that we work with in the Park Nicollet system. And it's been a really fantastic partnership. We have just a wealth of data about patients that informs the program, our program, and programs nationally. I do have some information. I have very preliminary results from a 2021 patient satisfaction survey that we did. And this is the first time we've done a patient satisfaction survey. Our intention is to repeat this at a minimum every 2 years. And we just got the results in. So I just have a couple of slides with some top line data to share with you. We did ask about the annual registration fee and whether patients feel the annual registration fee is affordable. And I would say 53% somewhat disagreed or strongly agreed, or sorry, strongly disagreed that the annual registration fee is affordable. So that's that $200 fee. So that continues to be, I think, a barrier for patients. Distance traveled to my medical cannabis dispensary is reasonable. 58% of patients strongly agreed or somewhat agreed that the distance traveled to their dispensary is reasonable. And we have more data that we'll be able to share as we do complete the analysis on exactly like what's the average amount of time people are spending traveling to dispensaries. So we'll be able to share that as we continue the analysis. When I visit a dispensary, I can find the products I'm looking for. 69% strongly agreed or somewhat agreed that they could find the products that they're looking for at the dispensary. And then this is the last slide, I think, from the survey. It was easy to find a healthcare practitioner to certify me. 62% of patients strongly agreed or somewhat agreed that it was easy to find a healthcare practitioner to get certified. So those are some of our top line results. I just thought that would be interesting to share with you all, especially as we're considering and having discussion about policy issues later in the agenda. So that concludes my presentation. I'll stop sharing my screen and just pause to see if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, Darren has. Darren does.
Members.
Go ahead.
Members, any questions? It looks like we have Mr. Bostrom.
Yeah, this is Bruce Bostrom. As I mentioned, I'm a pediatric oncologist, and we have actually used medical cannabis in a large, over 100 patients at Children's Minnesota with mostly oncology diagnosis. It's been very effective in our experience for chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting, especially in adolescents. We've used it in a large number of patients for that, for chronic pain, and also for end-of-life care in patients mostly with brain tumors where the prognosis may be not as good. So we have a very good experience, and I and my colleagues continue to use it.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Bostrom. Representative West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question since I'm new to the whole subject, wasn't around here for the medical cannabis being passed into law. Why is it limited to vertically integrated companies and then only 2 vertically integrated companies? What was the reason when the bill was passed?
Sure. So I joined the program in 2019. So I don't have that history either. So I will defer to others that were around during that time.
Any other
seemed
members?
Like the place to ask.
Thanks, Representative West. Any other members? Sarah, anybody have any additional? You're right. I think it was, originally, literally, it was legislatively directed, the only 2. And so I think that's what drove it. Has that changed? No. Will it change? We don't know. But I think that's what it was. And so, as you know, Representative West, the challenge that I think the medicinal cannabis program is excellent. But the costs and restrictions in getting it to a level to be able to function and be financially sustainable and accessible for all involved, I think that's why we are still limited to the 2 providers. Will that change? Like I said, I think that's where as the program grows, we will have to consider all of those things. Anybody else have any additional comment to add? No, Mr. West.
I had a comment, if that's okay.
Mr. West,
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was around in the Capitol doing some advocacy for another bill when the medical cannabis bill passed, and was sort of in the loop somewhat. And I'm sure you all know this, but at the time, Governor Dayton was the governor, and there was some concern on his part about the medical cannabis resembling the medical cannabis programs in other states. And a deal was sort of struck, a compromise was struck between Governor Dayton and his concerns and the legislature, resulting in a very unique program, for good and for bad. We can criticize it or we can compliment it, but a very unique program. And subsequently, our program has actually been copied by other states. I'm probably telling you all things you know, but I think some of this came out of the concern that the stated concern that the medical cannabis products in our state should be clearly different from just illicit marijuana street drugs, and I think that there was a lot of efforts to differentiate medical cannabis from marijuana. That's 2014, and a lot has changed since then, but I think this may have come out of that. That's my hypothesis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Resnick. Representative West, any follow-ups?
No, I'm good. Thank you for the
Excellent.
background.
Ms. Schroeder?
Yeah, I would add to Mr. Resnikoff's comments too, that the states that copied our program have all started with more than 2 companies. Like Ohio had 8, Pennsylvania had 16, New York had 10. So yes, other states have followed our model, but on the issue of the number of manufacturers, that they did not follow. I did have a question for Chris, and that was, how many patients, like what is the percentage of patients that responded to the patient satisfaction survey? I was actually lapsed for a little while and tried to respond because I got the email and it wouldn't let me log in because I was lapsed, and that was my reminder to re-register.
That is an excellent question. I don't have that information right in front of me because these are such preliminary results, but I do remember David, who is our research manager, telling me that he was pleasantly surprised at how many responded. And we did, we have a number of patients that are what we call OMC managed. It just means that they're paper-based. They're not on the electronic registry, and we did mail them surveys as well. And we had an exceptionally high response rate from the paper surveys as well. So those got counted too. And I'm hoping that the response rate will just go up from here. I can get you that as a follow-up, Maren.
Thank you, Ms. Stokes. Ms. Schroeder, any follow-up?
Yeah, I would just comment that from like ear to the ground, hearing from patients, most of them aren't registered. They don't want to register. It's too expensive. They don't want the product. So I think we're getting, I wouldn't give a whole too much weight to the patients are satisfied. The patients in the program might be satisfied, but 26,000 patients in a state that should be closer to 70, 80,000 is probably not representative of the entire patient population.
Excellent. Ms. Phillips?
I just had a question about potentially.
Ms. Phillips,
I'm sorry. Did I interrupt? I'm sorry. Okay.
That's okay.
I was just wondering if maybe the survey in future times can actually have some kind of questions about, would they consider, going out of state? Because I know we have some neighbors like in Illinois where it might actually be easier for them to go and get cannabis. And I'm just wondering if, we could ask if, these restrictions are making them consider that. It just might be something to kind of pursue.
Yeah, no, I think that is a real situation. I do think we want to be careful about asking patients about that because it's considered illegal activity. You're not allowed to bring cannabis across state lines. And so I think we just have to think about having that information and asking that question.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Ms. Alkster, any follow-up? Excellent. Thank you. Representative Ellison.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Stokes, can you tell me, do other states have this registration fee, and where does Minnesota fall in line with that?
Yes.
Ms. Stokes?
I believe that all states have a registration fee. Minnesota currently is by far the highest fee in the nation.
So we need to look into that. Okay.
Yeah, and my understanding is it was set at that because the way that our funding structure is that we are a fee-based program. So we have done quite a bit of analysis on this issue, and we'd be happy to share that with you offline.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Ms. Stokes. Anybody else? Any questions? Great. I see no hands. So we'll move on to the next section. We've got the manufacturers. I believe we have representatives from both. So let's go. We have, in order of the agenda, we've got Bureau Health. Who's here representing Bureau Health?
Morning, guys. Kyle Kingsley, CEO of Bureau Health Minnesota. How's everybody doing?
Excellent. Kingsley, the floor is yours.
Great. Yeah, so we've been in the process of preparation for over a year now, really focused on improved process, modification of personnel and training, improving our facilities. As I mentioned, this started over a year ago. We anticipate this will continue for at least a year or two to come. Significant hiring. The building of flower units for our patients is very different than a lot of our standard products that we've built to date. So it's been a big focus for us, barring any unforeseen testing or logistical issues. Highly confident that we're going to be ready on March 1st for our patients with sort of a burgeoning and expanding offering of diversity, different strains over time. And very excited to bring this to patients of Minnesota. People have been clamoring for it for 6 years now. Any questions from anybody in the task force? Happy to answer anything specific.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. Any challenges, issues that we should be aware of, short and the long term?
No, over time, we will need to expand capacity, but the rulemaking has been one of the best we've been part of, very inclusive with a focus on safety and patient inputs. And it's been a very nice process to be part of. So very excited to get this started for our patients.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Kingsley, because I do believe for those in attendance, early on, I think there was some confusion or lack of participation, or it looked like there may be some conflict, but clearly that was resolved. It was resolved very quickly. And that's the reason to get everybody's affirmation that it's working for everybody in the entire life cycle of this program. So that's why we're here today. So thank you, Mr. Kingsley. Mr. Resnikoff, question?
Hello. Yeah. Hey, how are you doing, Kyle? And part of my role is to work in the pain clinic in the county hospital. Many people with a lot of pain and not a lot of money. And that is a huge barrier for them accessing this. I don't think we have equitable access to this program across the different socioeconomic statuses in our state. So one of the benefits of whole plant medical marijuana is hopefully to lower the price. So I wonder if you could talk about your projections on how this may affect your pricing and how in turn may affect access to your medications for those without a lot of needs.
Yeah, it's my, thank you, sir. It's my belief that the default for most patients right now is the illicit market to access affordable flower, predominantly imported from the West Coast. And so the addition of flower at a very substantially more competitive, as in competitive to the illicit market price point, is going to be very meaningful. As I've represented, our goal is really per unit active ingredient for patients that are able to switch from more expensive processed products to flower. That over time, our goal is for that to be about half the cost for folks. So we're being aggressive on the pricing side of things. We're really looking to take a huge chunk out of the illicit market. And, as a physician and just having been part of the program for so long, this is one of the most exciting aspects, is to finally start to bite into that. And really I anticipate over the coming years, this will be transformative on the price access side. And off the bat, flower is a much more affordable alternative than a lot of these processed products.
Excellent. And Mr. Kingsley, before we move on, I think that just a little bit of education, the consumption of flower in the vehicles of the delivery vessels. We've got a public audience watching here, and we all assume everybody, even on the committee here, and everybody involved knows what that means. I've got a question from Mr. Bosser, but if you have 2 minutes, could you give the delivery vehicles with the methods for the utilization of the leaf?
Yeah. So people's default assumption is that you're going to smoke or combust the plant material. You can do that you can do that in vaporizers, you can do that in pre-rolls, you can do that in pipes. That's not actually our preferred method. It's allowed, as it should be, because that will be the default for many people. But we're a healthcare organization. We're laser focused on encouraging people to really focus on vaporization. And so the difference is, there's a little more expense up front, and that you need a vaporizer that's appropriate for vaporization. And what this does is it basically heats the material to the point where you get evaporation of the medicinal components versus burning the material and generation of free radicals. So we really encourage people to take the vaporization path. And obviously, similar to vaporized oils, we're not going to encourage people with lung and pulmonary issues to go a pulmonary route of delivery. Sometimes there's really no alternative. But I just do want to emphasize that we are medically focused here and really encouraging people to do the vaporization path for the plant material.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. And Mr. Bosser.
Yes, I have a question about what the THC to CBD ratios of the flowered products you're going to be used. As you know, they vary widely, and some CBD has a modulating thing for the side effects of THC. So can you expound on that, please?
Mr. Kingsley?
Yes, doctor, happy to answer that. Our intent over time is to mimic sort of our spectrum, which goes from nearly pure THC as far as the ratio goes to nearly pure THC. And as you know, there's another variable, and that's just sort of the absolute concentration of those components. You can have a 5% THC flower, you can have a 20% THC flower. Our goal is to really address that spectrum. Now, most folks in the pain realm are going to be at the 1-to-1 CBD to THC ratio or higher on the THC side of things. But our intent is over time to address the full array of ratios there.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. Mr. Bostrom, any follow-up?
So the initial product will be a 1-to-1. Is that? And you'll be developing
Most of our
other-
initial strains will be on the THC side of things,
Yeah.
the higher THC end. But our intent is to have 1-to-1 products. And I don't have an answer for you if that 1-to-1 will be available on day one, but we will absolutely have those products over time, and probably CBD dominant flower also. You should note that CBD dominant flower is generally not that well tolerated. But we will be rolling out various products for patients just because CBD is exceedingly expensive.
And what's the approximate THC to CBD ratio of the initial offering?
So several initial offerings that'll scale up over time. Most of them are THC dominant. So you're going to have 18 or 19 to 1, roughly, ranging from 15 to 25% THC on the initial products. I apologize, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me because they haven't been tested yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley and Mr. Bostrom. Next in line, we have Ms. Hauser.
Hi, Kyle. Hoping you can expand a little bit on how you anticipate flower reducing the overall cost, kind of going back to Dr. Resnikoff's question about access and affordability. And what is the timing for that? Because cost is an urgent issue for many patients, myself included.
Yeah, one of the biggest frustrations, guys. Oh, I'm sorry.
You're good, Mr. Kingsley.
Thank you. One of the biggest frustrations has been pricing, and I'm not trying to be evasive, Jessica, but I don't know what to expect as far as patient volumes. What I can tell you is that not only are patients over time going to have access to flower, which is substantially cheaper. Obviously this isn't as helpful for Wyatt off the bat, but eventually all products, just given the economies of scale, are going to come down in pricing over time. Now, I don't know if we're going to see just a swapping out of patients moving to flower from the existing products on day one with a very little increase in patient numbers, or if this program is going to triple or quadruple in the first year. I just don't know where we're going to land, but that'll be a primary determinant on the pricing of our products more globally. So I'm not trying to be evasive, it's just uncertain. I can tell you it is a priority for us to get prices down on all products. It's just that will take time, and that's heavily dependent on demand. Right now we are a very demand limited program. As some of you have pointed out, some of the fewest patients per capita in the United States. And that's a major contributor for our pricing. Although our pricing has been generally deemed as, competitive based on the analysis from MDH compared to other similar programs. So, not trying to be evasive, Jessica, but that's, time will tell. I'm hopeful over the next year we'll see real movement on pricing.
Ms. Hauser, any follow-up? Thank you. We have Ms. Schroeder.
Yeah. So I didn't come around until right after the original 2014 legislation was approved. But I have worked extensively with some of the advocates that were involved. When this program was first in place, I believe the estimation on patient numbers was like 12 to 15,000. So without sounding offensive, but those of you that know me know that I tend to be pretty blunt. I think it's a little disingenuous to lean on patient numbers to have the prices as high as they are with only two companies. because these other states that I mentioned earlier, Ohio, Pennsylvania, etc., yeah, our prices might be competitive, but I believe they have 8, 10, 12 manufacturers. So I'm not sure that the patient numbers with 2 companies is the answer to this problem. And like I said, I don't mean to be rude, but I tend to be very blunt. So apologies. That's my that's my thoughts.
Mr. Kingsley and Ms. Schroeder, I think what we'll do is we'll take your question and we'll also make a response available too if anybody from Leafline wants to address this question as well. So, Mr. Kingsley.
Yes, I encourage members of the task force to look at the analysis that was done by the Department of Health and look, we all want prices to come down. That's just objectively the case. But I do think it's important that we look at objective data for where we actually stand compared to other programs. And I'd encourage everybody to look at that formal analysis done by a disinterested third party.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. And so anybody from Leafline want to follow up on this?
Mr. Chair, Buck McAlpin here with Leafline. I would agree with exactly what Dr. Kingsley said. And I think when I make my comments, it'll be about our transitioning to a larger purchaser of Leafline over some of the large financial needs around these cannabis operations.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. McAlpin. And so with that, I see no other hands. And what I'd like to do is move on to Leafline. So if you could provide an update on where Leafline is as it relates to the 2021 legislation and or where you're at in the positioning and or any other outstanding issues that you see that need to be addressed as a part of this group.
Yeah, sure.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, Chair Coran, Chair Edelson, and committee members, thanks for having us. I'm going to start today with just kind of a transfer. I think folks have saw in the media, we've sold Leafline Industries. My name is Buck McAlpin. I've been lobbying for Leafline since the start of the program. And I've also had the opportunity to serve as the board chairman for the last 3.5 years of Leafline. About 6 months ago, we began to look at the intensive, back to Ms. Schroeder's comment, the very intensive capital funding needed to massively grow our model. And I know Dr. Kingsley and his companies put a lot of financial commitment into making this happen also in Minnesota. So our board began to explore and meet with companies. And we really settled on the founder and chairman and CEO of Green Thumb Industries. And his name is Ben Kovler, who we met with numerous times and negotiated the sale of Leafline, which took effect on December 30th. And as of today, the company's being ran by Green Thumb. They've brought in lots of subject matter experts. And as the board chair and being involved with it, we felt that their values that we saw out of Illinois and their programs, they're in about 17 states. They now provide cannabis to over 50% of the population in the US. And we really needed to do quite an expansion out at our Cottage Grove site to be able to meet the continuing needs. As we hope, as Dr. Kingsley alluded to, the program grows with the addition of raw flower as another delivery method under our medical cannabis program today. Nobody likes the prices where they are, and we would surely like to see more people in the program. And we think some of the changes that you all bravely made last session will help us get to that spot. But Rachel Lober from our science team will talk in a minute, but Mr. Chair, if I can indulge, and I'd like to introduce Dina Rollman, who's the Senior Vice President of Government Relations and Policy from Green Thumb Industries, just to talk a little bit about their company, because it is a change, I think, of what we've worked with the state the last 5 years. And I think it would be good to hear from her about what the company is and where we're going.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McAlpin. And so, Ms. Rollman, please state your name and your position.
Hi, I'm Dina Rollman, and I oversee government relations for Green Thumb Industries. I've been fortunate enough to be with the company since it was founded in 2014. We are based in Chicago, Illinois, and we were created when Illinois legalized medical cannabis. I was passionate about the ability to promote health and wellness for the residents of Illinois, and so left my job at a law firm. I'm an attorney by background, and really jumped in. Having met the founder and CEO, Ben Kovler, I believed in the vision of this company to really focus on wellness for people, however you define wellness. And so we were able to start in Illinois, and that is a very medically focused state, always has been. So really the medical patients are the backbone of our company. Over the last 8 years, we've been fortunate enough to, either apply for licenses or acquire licenses in multiple states, bringing us to a place now where we have a unique vantage point of operating in 16 states. We have, 14 manufacturing facilities or more, probably 16 now across the country. We're publicly traded, which really I tout, not because it sounds great, but because it really leads to transparency in how we operate. So at any given time, I encourage you to look at our website and learn about where we operate, what our financials are, how we spend our money, what is our compliance record, all of that. We really believe in being a transparent partner to our markets. And we're just really excited to be in Minnesota. We're a Midwestern company at heart. We're really excited about the program. We think we have found a great partner in LeafLine. We love what they've been doing and the relationship that they've set and the credibility that they've established over the years. We intend to continue that. We don't intend to rock the boat here. We think it's a great program with a great company, and we're here to continue that. And as Buck mentioned, we have the ability to bring additional financial resources, a deep infrastructure of a large company, meaning that we have a lot of subject matter experts and a lot of, just internal bandwidth that we can throw at any problem or any development. So we're excited about how we can, help the Minnesota medical marijuana program, improve and evolve over time. So thank you for having me.
Ms. Roman.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Roman. Ms. Hauser.
Thank you, Senator. This is a general question for the task force. When the legislation was originally passed, the focus on having 2 manufacturers based in the state was that they should have Minnesota roots and continuity. And that was a huge kind of point that was made during the legislation. And I am open to the idea of having manufacturers from other states come in, but it brings us back to the point that our program is far too limited with only 2 manufacturers. And to see one of our original manufacturers that was touted as being kind of a homegrown state, that being a priority, I think this is a good time to open up to more Minnesota manufacturers, because we know there are organizations that are willing and ready. And again, that leads us back to access and better price points for consumers. So kind of a question and a statement, like, where are we at with increasing the number of manufacturers?
Thank you, Ms. Hauser. And I think that's certainly one of those issues when we talk about all of those things at what's next. That is certainly going to be on there because it is all about accessibility, through the program, while ensuring that we have a Minnesota-based program and a true medical medicinal cannabis program, not a California medicinal cannabis program. So I appreciate it. So we'll table that from the perspective of it certainly is there's a lot of conversation about it. So Ms. Schroeder.
Thank you, Senator. I was just curious. I've heard the LeafLine GTI relationship referred to as both a merger and now this morning as a sale. Those things having 2 very different meanings with Minnesota licenses. So could either Mr. McAlpin or Ms. Rollman or Ms. Tholkis speak to that process and any license transferring approval and when that might have occurred?
Thanks, Ms. Schroeder. And Mr. McAlpine, if you could provide a statement, then I think would it be Ms. Folks could provide us an update on that as well, and that it is in compliance with the licensing requirements and the enabling legislation years ago. Mr. McAlpine.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and members, it was we had 215 members that owned LeafLine, and it was a stock purchase of our current membership. So we did work with Mr. Teskey and the OMC to be sure we followed the statute, that the company is still LeafLine Industries today, and that was the acquisition of the company. So my terminology, merger, Ms. Schroeder, was probably incorrect, but they they acquired the ownership of the stock of our investors, and the company today registered with the state still maintains as Leafline Industries.
Thank you, Mr. McAlpin. Ms. Schroeder, follow up, or anybody from Office of Medical Cannabis, Ms. Stokes?
Sure, I can just say that I agree with Buck's assessment that the requirement is that the registration agreement is not transferable, and the registration agreement remains with Leafline Labs.
Thank you, Ms. Stokes. We have Mr. Resnikoff.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Actually, two-part question. The first is whether you, with this recent change, are planning any infrastructure changes or investments. I guess that's my first question, is what investments in changes in your facilities are being proposed? And then secondarily, I don't know this, but I assume in other states, you're involved in recreational cannabis as well, and what sort of activities relating to development of facilities or development of legislation to promote legalized recreational, which is outside of the scope of medical cannabis. And I just wanted to sort of get you on record about what your approach or policy or investment is, both financial and advocacy investment in the recreational arena. Thank you.
Mr. McAlpin.
Yeah, I can start and maybe turn the rest over to Dina, Mr. Chair. Is that yes, Green Thumb's team has been on the ground with us here with the Leafline team, and we have been looking very aggressively at a very large grow facility that'll begin to take shape this spring when we're allowed to out at our Cottage Grove site. We were already working on that and had a lot of that in place, and had a little over 100,000 square foot conditional use permit already approved by the city of Cottage Grove to begin an expansion. And obviously our relationship with Green Thumb, acquiring our stock and being working with Leafline Industries, that we're able to fund a project of that size to be able to have that type of product available. I'll let Dina talk about the work with other states around legalization.
Yeah, thank you.
Any additional comments?
Yeah, just, I think Illinois would provide a good example of that transition from being a medical cannabis only state to also having adult use. And as I said, in Illinois, just as in Minnesota, medical cannabis patients are the backbone of the program. So it was very important as the state transitioned over to not lose sight of that, not, suddenly leave patients out in the cold. So there are things that you can build into legislation to give patients comfort that they will remain a priority. So things like, we have it statutorily required in Illinois that there's an adequate supply of product for patients, dedicated to patients. So, if you have 10 units of something left on the shelf, and in the past you always had 10 units available for patients, all 10 units must be dedicated to the medical patients. You cannot make them available to adult use. But then there's other more practical things like being able to pre-order products online and come to an express pickup window. So especially during a time of COVID, to limit the amount of time any patient would have to be indoors. So we offer curbside pickup for patients in Illinois. We also have a lot of times a dedicated entrance to the dispensary, to the store, so that, medical patients can, have that different focus of they might have all types of immune compromised conditions or things like that. They can get in, have a dedicated line, socially distanced. They can have dedicated personnel behind the desk there who can counsel them on what types of products they need. These are the types of things that you maintain. Even when you add adult use customers, you ensure that over time you're continuing to grow your medical cannabis population and continuing to meet their needs. So that's something that we keep front and center.
Could I quickly follow up with the comment?
Sure, Mr. Resnikoff, follow up.
Okay, so very quickly, that all sounds very interesting and good, but my only one concern is that that the cost of medical cannabis remains high, and that some of that financial profit, if you will, or revenue gets redirected into development of recreational cannabis. And I just worry about, some of our niche products like CBD for seizure disorder, et cetera. We should be reinvesting in lowering the cost of that for the medical needs rather than reinvesting in recreational advocacy, recreational development. That's my opinion. I just want to put that on the record.
Thank you, Mr. Resnikoff. And I see Ms. Rollman, do you have a follow-up to that?
Just to, restate that we're committed to the patients, and I hear your concern. But, I think we have a demonstrated track record in other markets of continuing to meet patient needs.
Thank you, Ms. Rollman. Mr. Kingsley.
Mr. Senator, if I can just make a brief comment.
The floor is yours.
From where I sit, it's very hard to see this change as anything but a positive as far as stabilizing the program. To address Dr. Resnikoff's concern, just from where I sit, this isn't going to result in an efflux of dollars from the Minnesota program. It's going to result in a very substantial investment in infrastructure for the medical program here in Minnesota. So I can say that, sitting in a patient's seat here, this is an influx of expertise and an influx of capital that I think is going to be highly stabilizing for the Minnesota program.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. So with that, what I'd like to do is move on. Let's move on to the last piece from an update perspective. So we have the testing labs. First on the agenda is Legends Technical Services. Who's here representing Legends?
Yeah, this is Tom Baird with Legend.
Mr. Barrett, the floor is yours. Please state your name and position for the record.
Yeah, this is Tom Barrett. I'm Vice President, Legend Technical Services. Been one of the 2 approved laboratories for the last 6 years. Currently, we are in good position with the flower material as we've been working with hemp for the last 5 years. For testing wise, we're in good shape. The only issue that we potentially see with the rules as written right now is the sampling by the laboratories. This could cause additional time and cost that needs to be passed on to the growers, as we are currently not doing this sampling. And
Thank you, Mr. Baird. Help me out. Mr. Barrett, did you have additional information to add?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, I'll do this again. Sorry, this is Tom Barrett, Legend Technical Services. Method-wise, we are in good shape. We've been doing hemp materials related to cannabis for 5 years under the hemp program. So we should be in good shape with that. The only issue that I potentially see is with the laboratory sampling. That'll add cost and time. And with the sensitivity to cost, I think that should be looked into. And what is the rationale of laboratories doing the sampling? The laboratories currently are not doing sampling. That is the main issue as far as my concern as far as the laboratory goes.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. And somebody help me out on the rules, because I know that was one of the early comments when I met with everybody throughout the summer, in that there was an original proposal to change the sampling for leaf relative to all of the other products. I thought that was resolved. Who can help me out? Is that Ms. Folks? Or if Ms. Folks, could you address that piece for us, please?
Sure. So it is still in the rules that, the laboratory did express their concerns about that. We felt that we were giving adequate time for them to be able to staff up and to be able to make that change. Currently, the laboratories, they're not able to certify test results that provide that they're representative of the batch, because they don't take the sample. So when you have a third party, when the manufacturers are doing their own sampling of their own product, a laboratory can't speak to where that sample came from. I mean, they know that it came from the manufacturer, but they did not take the sample themselves. So shifting the responsibility from the manufacturers to the labs would ensure a representative sample is taken and that the sample is consistent with each manufacturer. And that is becoming an industry standard as well.
Thank you, Ms. Stokes. Mr. Kingsley, your hand is still up.
That's an error. Sorry, Mr. Senator.
Thank you. Is there any question? I see Rachel.
Yes, I will just introduce myself quick. I'm Rachel Lober. I'm the Chief Science Officer from Leafline. I've been with the company since 2015. I also wanted to bring up the question regarding the sampling for flower material. From our perspective, it also would be adding cost to the flower product. And, would still like to better understand the rationale since we are not having lab staff sample our current extract products. And I feel if we have a robust SOP in place for the sampling, that seems like it wouldn't be necessary.
Thank you. And that's why we're having this meeting, because it was understood that came out early in the process, and it was and then I think many people, those on the task force and those in the rules, said that it had been resolved. Clearly, that has not been resolved, or it is resolved to a level that's not everybody's not satisfactory with. So, thank you. We have Mr. Pearson.
Yeah, I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Roger Pearson. I'm the president of analytical services at Aspen Research, who's the other laboratory. I just wanted to weigh in and agree with Tom and Rachel on the laboratory sampling. So currently that's not the process, and we're sampling and analyzing and certifying medical products. And when we do work for medical device companies or pharmaceutical companies, we don't go on site there and take the samples. They're delivered, they're audited internally on themselves to make sure that the sampling is done correctly. So at some point in time, I think we do have to look at value add. And I just see no value add personally here by having the laboratory sample at a site that's so remotely distanced from the laboratories.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. And that, and early on in the conversations, that this portion of the work that you do for the cannabis and the hemp testing is such a small portion of your overall operations. And so it was highlighted that this could be a real financial challenge in the inability to pass those costs on, or then it becomes unaffordable and or undesirable from the testing companies that we currently have. It's taken quite a few years, it appears, for the companies we do have to build up the capabilities. Does it put your companies at risk in continuing to participate in being a lab to do the critical testing that we need?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. This is Tom Baird, and I agree with Roger. Yes, it does. Like you stated, it's a small percentage of our business, so the margins are small.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett and Mr. Pearson. What I would ask, and I would assume many other members would want to know, help us understand, in a follow-up, what the financial implications are than you hiring staff, not sure where you hire them from, for such a limited activity, and where you would, how you'd be able to accommodate that, and what impact it will have on you. To talk about that, it may impact your decision to move on and to even stay in this particular part of the business is going to be critical for our program. So if you could do that as a follow-up, please let us know what those implications are, and then we'll table this and continue to bring it up as the list of issues that need to be addressed. So thank you. Anyone else, comments or concerns on this topic? Representative Hamilton.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have, I guess I'm moving off of the testing. Is that appropriate, or should I wait?
Sure. What's the topic? We're going to move on to the next piece. Is really about if it's not about the update, the legislation, and really the next topic is going to be, and what are the outstanding issues? I know you're at the forefront of outstanding issues as we talk about those things that have had a negative impact as from the implementation of the plan and participation in the plan as it refers to rights. So is that what you'd like to do? Okay.
Yes, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
So for those of you, I'm Representative Rod Hamilton. I represent District 22B, the southwestern part of the state. I have multiple sclerosis. A couple years ago, I actually enrolled into the program. My specialist is with the Mayo Clinic, and so they actually wrote the prescription. I toured all the facilities. I was very impressed with the professionalism, the safety, the security with both facilities. And right after the department helped me enroll into the program, I was notified. The ATF sent out a blank statement back in 2000, or excuse me, a statement back in 2011, I believe it was, that this is a controlled substance, and anybody who enrolls in the medical cannabis program would therefore lose their Second Amendment rights. I could no longer purchase ammunition, have gun ownership. I could not renew. I had a permit to carry. I could not renew my permit to carry because I was straight up, open and honest with everybody. I never even filled my prescription. I'm no longer enrolled into the program because I want to change the law, and before I move forward once again. And so you think about it, this is still a Schedule I narcotic in the eyes of the federal government. We are all criminals in the eyes of the federal government, and this is wrong. I've heard the stories from people who are receiving very great benefits from using this product for medicinal, well-being, if you will. And it's very unfortunate that we are, once again, we're all criminals. I know for a fact there are people driving across state lines purchasing this because people have approached me because it is cheaper. So that's taking place. They are criminals. And so my question would be to everybody, what are we doing, or what could we do to put pressure on the federal government to change this, to at least get it changed from a Schedule I to a Schedule II or something like that? I'd like to hear from people who are working in other states as well. What can we do? Because like I said, I lost my Second Amendment rights. I'm not in the program. I never filled my prescription. I would really like to see if this could help my condition. I suffer from muscle spasms and spasticity and pain as well. But again, well, I'm going to stop there, Mr. Chairman. What can we do to help change this so that we are not all criminals? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hamilton. And I think that's the very component of the latter half of this conversation is about what are those known issues where we put people into conflict with current law enforcement, yours specifically with a right, and as well as when we look at, I think the whole, over the summer, it's been about a conversation of possession. What does that look like relative to a very dangerous pharmaceutical and widely accepted and intoxicating painkiller, whatever that would be? Those are fine. And so this is the very purpose of the conversation, to look at and see, how do we make sure that we don't put more people in compliance and routine using a prescription legal drug in Minnesota, just happens to be cannabis based. And so we would seek open input. I know Representative Gomez, Representative Munson, and yourself, but there's a whole bunch of people that have a list. This is why we're going to have the conversation. I would like input from anybody that has a more national, because everybody is in the same boat from a federal government still scheduling as a class 1 narcotic. So seek open input from anybody. I think we see Representative Kings, or I'm sorry, I don't mean to demote you there, Mr. Kingsley, but Mr. Kingsley, if you would like to add some comment, and we'll seek any comment from any additional people who have experience in the other states as they've addressed these issues, and have they been able to do it successfully?
Yeah, Mr. Senator, so I've been fortunate enough over the last year plus to sit on the United States Cannabis Council, which is a group of, I think it's approaching 100 different companies now that are lobbying on the federal side for meaningful change. Mr. Hamilton, the kind of the issues that you state really do require federal change. And as many of you may know, there's currently sort of a logjam of various competing proposals on the federal level. There's some comprehensive legislation. There's some more focused stuff that may or may not get through this year. And there's also some competing Republican legislation that could pass as early as next year, potentially, if we get a change in the House of Representatives and Senate. So my best guess is that we do not see federal change, which is a major impediment to the issues you've described this year, and it could be 2 to 3 years out before we see that. Others are more optimistic, and I'd be curious if Gina has any national insights.
Sure. I mean, I think I'm in line with you that no federal change is expected this year, 2 to 5 years from now, depending on how things evolve in Washington, D.C. But you know, for the time being, I think it's status quo.
Thank you, Ms. Roman. So no other states have made a significant progress in either directing Representative Gomez. Of course, we have a bill. She's had that in the comments, and or is that something have other states directed their commissioner of Department of Health to request those exemptions? Has any of that occurred? Is anybody aware?
I want to say Iowa might be in the process of making that exemption petition. This is not my area of expertise, but maybe one of the legislators that has that bill that might be able to explain it a little bit better than me could explain the petition for exemption piece that we're kind of interweaving with changing federal law.
Thank you, Ms. Schroeder. And we'll take Mr. Teskey. He's got his hand up if you'd like to comment on that before we go to other members. Mr. Teskey?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I was just going to clarify that in Iowa, it was a third-party, non-legislatively directed petition to the DEA for the exemption, but Hawaii did have a legislative directive to their medical cannabis office to petition the DEA. As far as I know, the Iowa petition was rejected, and Hawaii's petition is currently in process.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Teskey. That's helpful. So it certainly is on top of the list. In addition to, when I look at the topics that have come across, and Representative Hamilton, of course, the Second Amendment is one of them. The other one is possession. You know, the how we treat a medicinal cannabis relative to any other dangerous pharmaceutical drug that you also shouldn't be driving with, and or, you know, but you can legally possess in your pocket, in your car, and everywhere. Driving under the influence, it kind of goes all together, and what we can do. The other one that I had, and this isn't tied to the original enabling legislation as an outstanding issue, is Delta 8. Essentially what's happened is certainly Delta 8 has provided for recreational cannabis, what I believe appears to be illegally because it's a synthetic THC, currently being sold in every store across the state of Minnesota today. So I'd be curious if anybody has any experience or has been tracking that as well. So those are the only things that I had at the high level. I know there's a whole host of issues that we have. So let's start with, we've got two hands up, and then we'll continue to go down the list of issues. And this will be a set of issues that I know many have drafted some legislation, but to have the conversation to get all those identified, and then I think it'll fall into our meeting frequency, or the need to meet more frequently than we have, to make sure to see what we can get through this legislative session. What can we tackle and get taken care of so we minimize the negative impacts of participating in a completely legal program in Minnesota? So, Ms. Schroeder?
Yes, you speak to me, Senator. So I actually have kind of spent the last week delving into the hemp Delta 8. I learned last night Delta 9 hemp issue in advance of this meeting because I expected it would come up. And those of you that know me know that I like to know what I'm talking about. The sale of Delta 8 concerns me. The sale of, I actually bought last night, I went to a smoke shop and I was asking them, you know, hey, have you seen any MDA or Board of Pharmacy enforcement here? Because the Department of Ag and the Board of Pharmacy have begun enforcing / threatening to enforce that there are no regulations, food and beverage with CBD is not authorized, etc. And as I was talking, you know, the person learned I was knowledgeable and a patient, and they said, well, we have these Delta 9 gummies that are hemp derived because the CBD was converted to Delta 9. Fortunately, I don't have the packet in front of me. Super illegal to possess. So I would appreciate if the officers didn't call the local sheriff, because it was, I wanted to see what these were. I wanted to see what the label said. Wanted to have I wanted to have the packaging as an exhibit, I guess, of what is out there being sold over the counter. This is incredibly concerning, right? Because not everyone is a good actor. Not everyone is checking IDs. And these items are ending up in the hands of, these items are, first of all, can be unsafe because not all of them are tested. They're not regulated. Second, we don't know who's getting their hands on them. And I think that we have a fundamental conflict here because we do have a Minnesota homegrown hemp industry, and that does fall under the purview of this task force after some 2019 or 2020 legislation that allowed these two manufacturers to sell hemp and hemp products, which I have another question on that. But my point is, I guess, as a task force with a duty to provide a report to the legislature that we have not produced since 2017 that is supposed to include hemp products, we should probably have a very serious conversation about this. I think we should probably have a special meeting on this issue, because we have to reconcile the fact that we do have a homegrown cannabis industry within 18K, which is the hemp program, with a limitation of 2 medical cannabis manufacturers. But we have all of these companies that are about to go out of business because they're being enforced against for producing products that are also produced by the medical manufacturers. I think it's a fundamental problem. There are patients that are purchasing hemp products. I purchase hemp products from a Minnesota grown, Minnesota local company that is producing under 18K, and it terrifies me that those products could be pulled from the shelf. And so I really urge our task force leadership, especially Senator Cran, Representative Edelson, to get us together to work on this issue from the perspective of patients.
Thanks, Ms. Schroeder. Go ahead.
I did have another question along those lines with the hemp products. I know that so we added edibles. I wrote that petition, and we added gummies and chews, which are authorized for sale as of August 1st. But I did notice that the two manufacturers are selling CBD chewables now, gummies. And I'm just wondering how that's authorized. I reviewed 15229, and my interpretation and my recollection of that legislation being passed was that when hemp products entered a patient center, they would be held to the same standard as medical cannabis. And I'm curious, A, if it is, and B, what the rationale is for allowing them to sell hemp products that are not yet allowed by the medical program within a patient, within the patient center.
Well, Ms. Schroeder, you did a great job at identifying the entire meeting's agenda. So, but on the Delta 8 and 9, I'm looking at it as, is this just another version of bath salt, for THC, in that they're getting around untested, it's an untested.
Do you have the ability to pull the screen up here so we can
stands today being offered on the shelf today. So, we do need to address that and make sure. As far as the edibles, is Ms. Stokes, or who could address that from
the restraint?
Ms. Schroeder's second question. Is it Ms. Stokes, or who could address that question?
There we go.
Sure.
Maybe adjust the window.
Darren could tackle the question about the CBD. The gummies that are being sold by our manufacturers are not part of the medical cannabis program. They are over-the-counter products that are not produced by the medical cannabis manufacturers. So I can let Darren address that.
Okay, Mr. Teskey, is there would you like to add any additional
comments and stuff? Don't.
Ms. Schroeder's question?
Maybe a little echo if we're talking. Can you guys hear me?
I'm sorry, I was taking notes. What was the second part of the question?
Ms. Schroeder, could you repeat your question quickly?
Yeah, it was the question about what is authorizing to medical manufacturers to sell edibles as a hemp product out of the patient center, when 152.29
This is dope.
reads as if any
So we
hemp
got most
products
of the
will
stream
be
up this morning, you
by
guys. Good
medical
morning. Thank you guys for
manufacturers
tuning into the
within their
Canna-Joe
patient
Morning
centers
Show.
authorized by medical
This is
program.
whoa,
I'll
hey,
quote from the
this is
statute,
a
subject to
special
the same
edition,
quality
and we're
control
online
program,
with
security and testing requirements, and other requirements that apply to medical cannabis.
Sure.
help me
Okay.
out here, Vari.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay, and
Ms.
this is the
Schroeder,
task force.
The unregulated
task force
CBD
on medical
products that
cannabis. Thank you guys for
manufacturers
tuning in and for
are
all the
not
comments.
medical
You guys were going to
cannabis.
stick around. We
What
wanted to do our show this
regulate
morning, but
is
we did
the
want to get
medical
on and say good
cannabis
morning.
products.
And thank you guys for
What
tuning into the show. You
152.29
know all of us. If you don't know
allows
us,
is for our
you'll get to know us.
manufacturers
Check it
to
out. We won't
acquire
talk
hemp
over it too much.
and
If you guys
convert it
have
into
questions,
a medical
drop them in the
cannabis
chat.
product.
If you also have questions on there, you should be
The
able
products
to
you're talking
also
about
drop them in the chat.
are
As
not
most have been doing. Anyway,
of that class.
we'll get back to
They
the medical
are,
cannabis thing.
as I understand it, simply retail CBD, similar to what you would find in other stores and other locations.
Thank you,
So
Mr. Chesky.
they're outside our scope.
Thank you, Mr. Chesky. Ms. Schroeder, follow up?
I really take that. I understand the department's position on that. Patients are the ones going to the patient centers to purchase from a medical cannabis manufacturer. Our statute 152.29 is very clear. Hemp and hemp products acquired by a manufacturer are subject to the same quality control program, etc. They're also supposed to be tested by a contracted lab approved by the commissioner, and they're supposed to verify that the hemp grower, hemp processor has a valid license issued by our Commissioner of Ag under Chapter 18K. My concern is that if we're interpreting the CBD products that are being sold as being 18K products under MDA, I think 152.29, the intent is that it would be treated as medical cannabis if it is being sold to patients out of a patient center. That's the point I'm making. I don't care what hemp subsidiaries of these two companies are selling at the gas station, because you can buy the same product at the gas station that you can buy in the patient center from the CBD market. I'm concerned with what patients are receiving from a medical cannabis manufacturer in a patient center, when I believe the intent, at least the intent of when I supported this legislation, was that it would be in the realm of, it would be treated as medical cannabis, and it's not being treated as medical cannabis. And I think that that's problematic. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Schroeder. And we have, I think all of these issues are going to continue to be intertwined as we move forward and to get the program defined and working to its most efficient manner. Ms. Rollman, you're next in your question or your hand up.
Oh, I just wanted to add that, Delta 8 is an issue that we're confronting in, every market. So we have done some work on it, working with legislators in other states. So, at the right time, at the right meeting, happy to, try to participate and help where possible in dealing with that issue.
Excellent. Thanks, Ms. Rollman. Question for anybody here, the cannabis experts, and it relates to synthetic THC, which it sounds as what Delta 8 is. Does it have the same residual or characteristics of standard THC in its the ability for it to remain in a component in the bloodstream or in somebody for up to 30 days or longer, or does it have a shorter lifespan in the ability, or is it detectable as cannabis derived THC? Can somebody help me out with that? And who would that be?
This is Dina Rollman. I would think that, probably Rachel could speak better to this than I can, because I'm not a scientist by background. But I will just say, really briefly, it's not that Delta 8 is synthetic. It is actually different than bath salts or things like that were synthetic. It's a naturally occurring component of the cannabis plant, but what people call it is really cannabis light, because it generally doesn't produce THC levels quite as high and intoxicating as Delta 9. But it sure is intoxicating enough that it should be regulated. So, again, we can get into it at a more appropriate time, but it's still part of the same plant. But it's just kind of almost like a loophole that's being exploited so that people don't have to be regulated in order to produce it and sell it.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Roman. And we've got a couple people up there, but I see Ms. Folks hop on. Ms. Folks?
Sure. I just wanted to add to what Dina said. So the Delta-8 is naturally occurring in the plant, but in very small quantities. And so what we are seeing on the market is a chemical conversion. So there are manufacturers who are chemically converting CBD into Delta-8. So I would argue that it's a mix, and part of the issue is that it's a big unknown. I would also just caution us to not get too focused on Delta-8, that there are hundreds of cannabinoids in the plant. And so I think that we need to think a little bit more broadly, because if you're too restrictive, you'll just start seeing Delta-10 and other things pop up. So.
Thank you, Ms. Folks. I had Anne, your last name, Hoekstra.
Hoekstra. And I had a question for Dr. Kingsley, or maybe the Leafline Lab folks. I was wondering, do you guys have any problems hiring pharmacists because of the concern with the uncertainty with the conflict between state and federal mandates? And so, you need to have your medical cannabis distributed by a pharmacist, but I know there's a lot of hesitancy with that conflict. So I'm just wondering if there's any hiring problems, just getting healthcare providers to sign on with your company to distribute that.
Ms. Roman or Mr. Kingsley, would you like to address?
No issue on the Vireo side with hiring pharmacists.
I'm not aware. Yeah, I'm not aware of an issue. Buck, please, correct me if I'm wrong.
Nope, we've had no issue at all, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. McAlpine.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Hoekstra, any follow-up?
I guess I just had one more question about Epilodex. So that's a cannabidiol-derived product that's FDA approved. I know that, if the FDA is willing to kind of look at products like this, has there been any legislation, anything that you're aware of where they're actually trying to run it through the FDA to actually get it approved? I don't know if your companies pursue that avenue. I know it is a Schedule I medication, but if it goes through like FDA approval, FDA evaluation, is that something that you guys have ever pursued, looked at?
Mr. Kingsley or Ms. Roman?
Yeah, I can address that briefly. So as you guys know, the FDA path is generally cost prohibitive, with the cost between somewhere between 100 million and multiple billions of dollars to get a single approved molecule through the standard FDA route. Our approach to date has been to be involved in clinical trials and gather significant safety and efficacy data around our standardized products. At this time, we do have multiple ongoing clinical trials in New York and other locations. So, short term, it's not going to give relief to our patients, but long term, it's an interesting path to get widespread adoption of cannabis-derived pharmaceutical products.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Ms. Roman, anything to add?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hoekstra. We have Rachel next.
Yes, I just wanted to chime in also on the derivatives that are the synthetic derivatives that are created from CBD isolate, converting to Delta-8, Delta-10, et cetera. From a chemist perspective, the conditions that are needed to do those types of reactions require some pretty nasty type of solvents and catalysts. So the idea that there are folks that are producing these compounds probably in their garage, they're not regulated, they're not being tested for residual solvents, residual metals. That's a huge concern, when it comes to safety. So just wanted to add that.
I appreciate it, Ms. Loebner. And we have Aaron. I don't have a last name for you there, Aaron. Aaron Chase.
Yes. I wanted to circle back to the fact that manufacturers are selling these hemp products and they're not held to the same standard. I, as a patient, have purchased these and I had no idea that they don't meet the same regulatory requirements. And to Rachel's point, how am I supposed to know what I'm actually ingesting? That's half the reason that I pay the premium I do to be a part of this program. Why on earth are they sold in the same stores?
And I think would either of the manufacturers want to address that, and or again, Mr. Keski, I think you provided the Office of Medical Cannabis's position on it. Anybody else want to add any additional comments to Aaron's question?
Happy to chime in briefly.
Mr. Kingsley?
So really a way to simplify this is to look at 3 distinct categories of product. There's the THC product that we grow, THC and CBD products that we grow in the manufacturing facilities. And obviously these go through the standard process of our formulation, our third-party testing, et cetera. We also are able to take raw material in the form of hemp, predominantly hemp CBD, and that can also be fed into our formulation process and then shelved as Vireo or Leafline branded products. And then the third category, which was kind of, basically this was just patients clamoring for this, is, why do I have to go to a gas station to get over-the-counter CBD products, which may or may not contain CBD? I can tell you that any third-party product that we have in our dispensary, we do require third-party testing, appropriate certificates of analysis to make sure that this is what it says it is, absent, sort of frank fraud on the operator's part. But we're not just putting the stuff you find in the gas station on our shelves. We're a physician-led, medically focused organization. This was really just patients clamoring for access to this in our dispensaries, in addition to our standardized, more expensive hemp input products that we build ourselves and test with third-party operators. So I don't know if that gives clarity or muddies the waters.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. Ms. Chase, any follow-up?
Thank you for clarifying. I still think that if I'm, coming to a provider, that's not on you. I appreciate you following the standards that you do and doing the testing. But still, like if I'm going to a dispensary, I feel like the products I take should be held to the same medical standards, because that's why I'm there.
Yeah, we are clear with patients about the over-the-counter standards. And I can tell you, Aaron, that I have friends and family that do purchase those products. That's my level of confidence in what we're selling in our dispensaries. So a very reasonable concern. Again, this was patient demand that put these products, these third-party products on the shelves.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. Ms. Chase, any quick follow-up?
Nothing to add.
Thank you. Okay. So we are in that section. I'm sorry, it dropped off. So we're in the section of policies and issues. We've heard some from a variety of members. We also have, I think what we'd like to do is from MDH, the Office of Medical Cannabis, you guys are on there. And I think we've spoken at a variety of issues. We'd like to get them at least identified. We have 30 minutes and to get them identified, and we're going to continue to work on those things. Based on the conversation so far, there's a bunch of known and unknowns, or a bunch of knowns and we're currently identifying. So who's going to take the lead on that? Is it Ms. Folks, or is that, Ms. Folks?
Yes.
Could you cover from the Office of Medicinal Cannabis, at least let's provide a high level set of topics that you have and get them identified. And then that will be certainly our work for the days between now and our next meeting. And so let's get them. So if you could, Ms. Oaks, cover Office of Medical Cannabis. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We have a short list of 6 items that we've identified that we would consider housekeeping or policy proposals. And would it be helpful for me to share my screen, or should I just read them off?
Yes, I think it would be Ms. Oaks.
Okay. There we go. Nope, it's not. It's giving me an error message. Okay, so the first item, it's
Ms. Folks, we can't see your screen.
Yeah, it's not allowing me to share.
Jesse McCardle, can you please make sure Ms. Folks can share her screen? Oh, Looks like Ms. Edelson, Representative Edelson, looks like you are co-host as well. Could you grant Ms. Folks the ability to share screen?
Yep, I am doing that right now. No, Senator, it's not usually, it just comes up that we can make her a co-host, and it's not. Do you have that on your screen? Your Zoom has a little bit different options than it does. If you make Mrs. Stokes a co-host, she should be able to do it right away.
Yeah, let's do that.
I could also just drop the document in the chat if that works.
You know, Ms. Stokes, I would probably just do that. Yeah, and then just go ahead and tell us what it is.
Yeah. Okay.
It's in the chat, so
yep.
Proceed.
Okay, so the first item is, so last legislative session, we were awarded a budget allocation for a track and trace or seed to sale system, which is basically a cannabis inventory management system, a software system. Current statutory language implies that there will be a state centralized system, but for enforcement purposes, it would be helpful to have explicit authority in statute. We feel like that would be pretty straightforward. I can give just an update on the track and trace system as well. We are in the final step of the procurement process for that. So we are well on our way to having that system, and we'll have it up and running shortly. We're in the contracting phase right now. So just to have that extra explicit authority would be helpful. The second item is a housekeeping item. We wish to change the term medical cannabis product to medical cannabis paraphernalia. Current law defines the term medical cannabis product to refer to things like vape pens, pipes, and paper. And in common usage, daily usage in the program, medical cannabis product in practice refers to medical cannabis being sold. So the vape oil, capsules, tinctures, the medicine. And the current definition has led to significant confusion in the program. There's a couple of obsolete items. MDH wants to, we've got citations in the document that I put in there, but there is a provision that expired in 2014 that outlines the steps that we were to take for initial applications to the program. And then there is a provision that expired in 2019 around the task force doing and submitting cost assessment reports, and that is no longer required. The fourth item is around third-party laboratory testing. I will collect the information that we have gathered. I know Maren put in the chat that most states are not doing that, and I sit on the board of the Cannabis Regulators Association, and most states are actually going towards having their labs gather the sample. And if it's not the lab, it's the state inspection staff that are gathering samples. And so it is becoming an industry standard so that, that there is uniformity in sample collection across the manufacturers. In addition to that, we want to expand third-party transportation of medical cannabis to include MDH. Currently, MDH cannot transport product. That includes our inspector or other staff within our program. And during the EVALI crisis, we were in a position where we needed to pick up product for testing, and we did not have authorization to do that. We would also like to expand transportation authority to the testing labs and to tribal nations. We have 2 tribal nations in Minnesota, White Earth Nation and Red Lake Nation, who have their own medical cannabis programs. They would like to be able to transport cannabis to testing labs, which are not located on their reservation, so they need authority to do that. and additionally to transport to one another. So from one nation to another as well. And then we wanted to allow for the manufacturers with the addition of dried raw cannabis and the volume and potential risk for having that product we wanted them to be able to hire security firms if they would like to for transportation. And we would need additional authority for that as well. And then the last item, item number 6, is to authorize the governor to enter into state tribal compacts on the issue of medical cannabis, just to allow us to have conversations to see if there are opportunities for collaboration amongst our programs.
Excellent. Thanks. Thank you, Ms. Stokes. Anybody have any questions? Ms. Schroeder?
Thank you, Senator. I just had a question on the change to 152.3.6 regarding obsolete language. Is that specifically subdivision 3, which expired in 2019, or is that also regarding subdivision 4, our reports to the legislature on recommendations, add, remove, how the program's going, etc.?
Ms. Stokes?
It's specific to subdivision 3 around the applications.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stokes. Thank you, Ms. Schroeder. Anybody else have any questions? I see no hands. Okay, and Ms. Stokes, I assume you have legislation drafted already?
We are in process, yes.
Okay, please share that as soon as that becomes available. We're in the point where all other and any other issues that are known, unknown. Anybody else have any other topics that have been ongoing, known issue that we need to get on the list of needs to address? Ms. Schroeder?
Thank you, Senator. I have a few of them. I've worked on some legislation with Representative Gomez and Senator Bigham regarding our patient protections. And there's kind of 2 big pieces in there. One is we currently have a provision that prevents employers from discriminating against patients for a failed drug test or their status as a patient in the registry. Unfortunately, what we've found over the last 6 years is there is no teeth to that discrimination protection. So we had legislation drafted to provide for attorney's fees and statutory damages for violation of that statute. I would really like to see that bill at least move and be heard and give some of these patients a chance to tell their story. Another piece of that bill is a criminal affirmative defense, specifically for patients for violations of 152.025, which is, I think it's 025, which is the 5th degree possession of a controlled substance. Given the restrictive nature, the cost of our program, we know sick people are crossing state lines. It would be nice to at least allow them to tell a court and a jury that they are a medical cannabis patient and they did use this for medical purposes, even if it was purchased outside the scope of the program. At least let them put that fact on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schroeder. Anybody else? Comments? I'm not sure if I was going to go because I believe Representative Gomez is on here as well. So it sounds like you've covered those issues. Thank you. Mr. Resnikoff.
I'm just curious, asking the group or the manufacturers if they have any experience on how it's going with hospitalized patients being able to continue their medical cannabis while in the hospital. I know that our institution, Hennepin Healthcare, allows for that, although it's very uncommon that people request it. And I know there are other institutions in the state allow for medical cannabis to continue in hospitalized patients. Does anyone have perspective on how that's going, or things that maybe we need to do to make this process more smooth?
Thank you, Mr. Resnikoff. Any comments?
Ms. Stokes, do you know about that question? I think that's a really good, important.
Yeah, so it's not something that we get called about frequently, which leads me to believe that it's not much of an issue because people do reach out on a variety of other issues, but this isn't one that we hear about very often.
Excellent. Would there be a way, Ms. Folks, of, we just talked about surveying, so I guess that certainly would be one of the things that, so we could get an ongoing view or perspective of those that have been hospitalized, or if those issues have arisen where they've been denied the ability, convalescent facilities, any of them, not just I think in a hospital, any of those where they become an issue. So to me, that'd be really helpful. With that, Representative Ellison, your hand's up. I think I can see your hand blends into your background.
It is. Thank you, Senator. Yeah, I think the doctor had raised a really good question, actually. I would be curious in our long-term care facilities, all these care centers, if we are having any issues with patients receiving or using medical cannabis. I definitely want to, Senator, as we're in this meeting, Senator Kren, I've been emailing you and Ms. Tokes about looking at our registration fee. So we will be looking at that in terms of legislation and involving the manufacturers in that as well. Because I mean, clearly from what we have from the survey that was done by the Office of Medical Cannabis, that does tend to be a barrier. And I just would like to say, I am chairing the next meeting. I think that Senator, I think we talked about March as being right after we have implemented the raw plants to check in with manufacturers to see how it's going. But also, I really want to look more into the Delta 8 and Delta 9 and all the different cannabinoid, I can't say the word right now. So if we could look into that a little bit more, and I think Representative Gomez has some connections with some people to bring in.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Representative Edelson. And I think with the topics that we have at hand, we've got some near term, and things we can get into the legislative pipeline. I would, based on what we see and what we hear, that our deadlines are going to pass quickly. So based on what we have in the list of topics, those that people have expressed and provided during this conversation, and those that we willingly go and seek, and those that come forward in the next couple weeks, try to have a great conversation about it. I think Ms. Schroeder talked about the need to have, on a couple of these topics, just a functioning work group to hammer out some of the issues to determine whether it's something we can get codified. And likely, I would argue that, I think if we shoot for March is great, but we'll be in deadlines. We'll be past first deadlines. So I would look to maybe shoot mid-February, or at least we'll shoot for March, but if need be, we can call in February. I think it's important enough that we have so many things out there as we're expanding the program, and just the issues identified, we got a lot of work to do. In addition to, I think, providing a report that hasn't been provided since 2017 as a part of our enabling legislation. So I think we've got a whole list of kind of task force issues, and, in our spare time as legislators, and everybody here involved is involved with every aspect of legislation or legislating. I think there's going to be a host of them. So I would say we could shoot out further, but likely look for a couple of specific work groups. I think we're going to have to formulate legislation and see if we can get what we can get in this season. That's, I think, the original intent. So Representative Ellison, we do have Mr. Hilger next on your on the line with your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Cran. I just want to call out, I did receive calls yesterday regarding substance use treatment programs, specifically residential, not willing to accept people that had prescriptions for cannabis.
Thank you, Mr. Hilger. And I think next is Aaron Chase, Ms. Chase.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering if we could also circle back on maybe talking a little bit more about additional licensings and manufacturers, and specifically Jess's question when we're looking to discuss, the fact that we have two multi-state operators here, in the spirit of a lot of wanting this to be Minnesota-based as well. I think it's important that we discuss these as a task force.
Yeah, Ms. Chase, I think that conversation as a legislator has been knocking at our door for quite some time. So I think there's a whole set of people working on those initiatives. in addition to, as Representative Edelson just spoke about, is the fees associated with the program. So we agree with you. It's on the list. Ms. Schroeder.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Representative Edelson asked me to collect a little data while we were meeting about the states that modeled our program and how many licenses they have available. Ohio currently has 21, Florida 22, and Pennsylvania 25. So while there were programs modeled on Minnesota, they have vastly expanded along with their patient numbers. And I think that those two things are related. Access, price, competition, variety is all at play when we talk about low patient numbers.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Schroeder. One question I had, it came up to me in a conversation with somebody in the drug treatment environment. Two things. I think Mr. Hilger, thank you for the documentation of some speaking of medicinal cannabis as a MAT or medically assisted treatment option. So would love to hear conversations about that. And then the other comment that I've received from others who use it and those that have in other states that, and I guess this is for the manufacturers, are there specific strains of the cannabis plants that are more easily or better during daytime or nighttime? Are there some strains, or is there a way to treat? I don't know the difference. I'm just asking out of pure ignorance. That are, I'm getting complaints that other states have the ability that have different strains where nighttime sleeping is easier and it literally is a different strain versus a daytime option that is less drowsy or doesn't have any drowsy effects. Is that something? Is that a perception that those who are using it in other states, or is that something real? That there are different strains. I know people use it for sleep relief, but it's a different strain. So somebody in the manufacturing side, if you guys could help me out. So Mr. Rollman, I'll give you the first shot at it.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. In other markets that are, have evolved over time, we're able to really offer a wide variety of products where we focus on what we call the effects, right? So we know that people come into our dispensary and they might be trying to deal with pain, or very common for people to have trouble sleeping. And so we can formulate products that are higher in some of the lesser known properties of the plant, like one is called cannabinol, CBN. There are different components of the marijuana plant that have different effects. And so you can manufacture products that highlight components that are going to give you the effect that you want. So I guess that's a long way of saying, absolutely, we have products that help specialize in helping people sleep.
So Ms. Rollman, so help me out with that. So it is, and I guess I could have simplified it, drowsy versus non-drowsy components or attributes. And so with that, there's those that have brought it to me are those who are in our current Minnesota program, and they claim that those are not options for us, but in other states they are. Do you offer them in Minnesota? And if not, why?
I'm going to have to defer. Yeah, I'll have to defer to Ms. Lober, I think, on that one.
Okay, Ms. Lober?
Yeah, by the way.
Okay. Ms. Lober, could you help us understand it? I'm just looking for, are we legislatively prohibiting you, or is it a market-driven? What's prohibiting you if you're not offering them today in Minnesota?
Well, so I would say that our current Heather product family line, which is our 1-to-1 CBD THC, is considered the daytime medication. It's not going to have the drowsy effects in most people. I mean, keep in mind that different individuals are going to respond differently to different, medications. But in general, like our Heather line with the 1-to-1, or also our Cobalt line, which is the CBD dominant, those are going to be typically, recommended for daytime use. The THC dominant products, including the Tangerine family, those are a lot of times, recommended for nighttime for sleep, help. There are other minor cannabinoids, as Dina was talking about. Currently, we are not utilizing some of those in our products, but it's something that we have looked at. Really, the biggest challenge is because they are minor cannabinoids. It's not something that we can readily isolate from the strains that we're growing in-house. But now with the new options that are available to us with Minnesota grown hemp and utilization of CBD and other hemp derived cannabinoids, that is something that we can look forward to, if that helps.
Yes, that's what we were looking for. I appreciate it. So, and Ms. Folks?
Thank you, Senator. I just wanted to add that I think that it might also be a perception issue. When Minnesota's program began, our rules required that the manufacturers not use the strain name in the packaging labeling name of the products. And so they may be using particular strains, but what people are seeing in other states, it's packaged differently. It's a little bit more front and center what they're seeing. And so, it could be time for us to revisit some of our original rules that were established for the program as well.
Thanks, Ms. Stokes. I appreciate it. That's why I asked, is it perception? Is it, what is it? But I think we have the answer, and I certainly appreciate it. So, and I agree with you. If we have to look at packaging, or that we don't allow for the flexibility to clearly identify those products, because if somebody's getting something they don't quite understand its full opportunity or full impact, then it's a disservice to them. Thank you. Ms. Chase?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on yours, Senator Coran, and then also Chris. As a patient, I've had the opportunity to travel to other states and have the means to also use cannabis in California, Seattle, and Colorado, and Nevada. And I will say there are strains, to your point, that I have found most helpful for daytime use, and then also strains that I find more helpful for my PTSD and nighttime. Specifically, like Kush strains for sleep, and then daytime strains, I found that I really am a fan of Tangy. And I really would like to see the packaging change, because it makes it easier from a patient perspective to really, dive into what the plant material is and have a better understanding of how to medicate. It gets a little confusing when they're labeled by colors and things like that, because, it might be a 1-to-1 ratio, but I truly don't really understand what I'm consuming.
Thanks, Ms. Chase. I appreciate it. And good feedback, because I do think if it is a packaging and we're restricting it, we need to be clear. And then if there's a legislative obstacle from the providers, or is it a market-driven obstacle, or just market-driven in lack of demand or lack of education? So we all play a role in this. So thank you. All right, we're coming up to the end. We have a whole list of topics in addition to the Department of Health and also medicinal cannabis. Representative Edelson has sent out, of course, to all of our members. There's a note out there. All the legislative members, please, if you have issues or you're drafting legislation, bring them to us, as well as any and all other participants or those that have concerns about how we move forward. I think Representative Gomez talked about bringing forth the hemp providers. That we've got our conversation has all been intertwined. So I think we'll bring them forward as well, and we'd seek input from them as we go forward to create the list of open topics that need to be addressed within this commission, this task force. And so we'll gather them. So please provide them. And any other comments? My co-chair, Representative Edelson, any other comments before we close?
No, I just want to thank everybody. And we might want to consider doing maybe working groups, subgroups here on the additional manufacturers conversation, as well as the packaged conversation. It sounds like we have some members on the task force that are really interested in that. So it would be nice to have a little bit more of a deep dive. But we'll be sending around a date for March, and we can maybe look at having some people meet maybe in February to kind of do smaller groups. We could possibly look at that as well. I just want to thank everybody.
Excellent. I agree wholeheartedly, Representative Edelson, and we appreciate everybody's participation. And with that, we have no further business before the Task Force on Medical Cannabis and Therapeutic Research. Thank you, everybody, for your participation, and have a great day. Bye now.
Thanks, Senator. Have a good day, everyone.
Back on. And say thank you guys for tuning in to the task force.
on
Stay at
medical
home
cannabis.
today. Don't
Hey,
go
what are you guys
anywhere.
passing joints over there? Oh, hold hands.
To the left.
Turning my phone back on. And
Float it to the left. Float it.
Float it.
Anyway.
You're inside your house today, stay there. It's gonna
Thank you
snow
guys
till-
for tuning in to the Canna-Joe Morning Show special edition. I hope you guys got to tune in and listen to the medical task force, the task force on medical cannabis here in Minnesota. Shout out to Maren Joy Schroeder. She's awesome. And everybody else on the task force. Sorry, Maren, if where you were talking, we were having some alternating audio issues, but I think we got it figured out for the next time we decide to broadcast live. One of these local things going on.
Work in progress.
You're right. It's definitely a work in progress, and we're gonna get it down, man. Shout out to Vari the man, Jenny, Dave, Alicia George, the producer. Wherever son knows she was on here. I don't know what happened, but we know she in there. She probably on another app doing the little turntables. I see she was in there mixing, playing some Kingpin Man. Yeah, see, Dave, you've been watching. Anyway, man, that was a great live stream. Hopefully, we plan to stream a lot more of these things as they happen throughout the year. So make sure you tune in to the Canna-Joe Morning Show for all the updates and all the live streams on things that are happening on cannabis with legislation and our legislators. I think the next live that we have, we'll be broadcasting the Senate DFL regulations on marijuana. The state of marijuana regulations in Minnesota. Is that right, Vari? Is what it's called?
You know what? If I wreck my recollection, we'll figure it out a little bit.
You reckon more recollection.
I got a phone call, so we'll discuss that later.
Don't forget to mute.
Hit the mute button in the Zoom.
Hello, is this Mr. Hootsman?
Hillsman, it's who's?
Well, they mispronounce my name all the time too.
I was gonna say, I bet he's got a few of them calls like that.
Rebecca.
I think I'm a
crop. Emphasis on the crop.
Okay.
Is Miss Shavari there?
Shavari.
She home?
Yeah, I'm home.
You want to send you a warranty on the headphones expiring?
I use the radio voice, Vari.
Yeah, what you need?
Yeah.
Make them hang up.
The auto warranty people. I love it. I drive a 1996, man. Really, my auto warranty is expiring soon. Oh,
you won't even let me have a warranty.
Anyway,
the place that's calling you trying to give you a warranty, they're like, your shit's too old.
Right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to the Canna-Joe Morning Show. Dave, do you want to give them a quick update on the weather? Var, do you got the weather up?
Yeah. It's snowing out.
It's snowing. There's going to be some snow.
Yeah.
So be
It's
careful
snowing.
where
We
you
got,
go.
I know,
Slip and
we got
slide.
like we got at least 4 inches down here. We could be looking at anywhere from 4 to 7 across this. In fact, put it on clouds. Actually, I was noticing that works better. It shows the density more. And look at it right now. You can see where the band is forming. Oh, a little too close. You can see where the band is forming, where the thick snow is in the green there. That's where we're already got about 4 inches. Some of these places out west by Marshall are going to be looking at up to a foot easy. The system is going to start. It's already going south. It'll be pretty much out of the picture for Minnesota by around midnight. Any friends out in Iowa, southern Iowa, that thing, if you want to pull the map up a little bit so you can see Iowa, you'll notice that as this system goes down, it's going to pound southern Iowa. And they're cold enough to where at 26, they're going to hit some serious snow down there, all the way into Missouri. So, yeah, but once the system goes through, I'm not sure what the wind is doing. I think it's going to be pretty calm, but as you can see, our temperatures are still going to be on the rise during the day because we get that wind coming out of the south. And I believe we're going to be pretty clear now after the system goes through. We got some cloudy days coming up, but I think the precipitation, as you can see, there's some East Coast stuff heading off in the distance. That one's going to create a real big problem on the East Coast. If you're out there by Boston, New York, Jersey, anywhere in that area by Norfolk, you're going to get pounded on Monday.
one day. That's some of those areas out there I seen on the news are going to be hitting up to 16 inches of snow around Boston and around the New York area. So once this system does go through, though, we're pretty good. And just so today, be careful if you got to go out. If you don't have to go out, I know my son's on virtual today for doing all that stuff from he's supposed to be anyway, from the computer. So stay home, man. Just stay home. Around dinner time, you can go out, maybe shovel, blow your snow out of there, and that's about it. Just be
dope.
So around dinner time then.
Yeah, for most places like around cities, around 6-7 o'clock, it should be starting to taper off.
Shout out to Minneapolis and St. Paul. They got a new mask mandate that you have to have a vaccine card to go to any restaurants. You have to have a vaccine card or negative test in the last 72 hours or something like that. Wow. Oof.
To go to concerts, events, and restaurants.
Well,
I don't need one to go fishing.
Oh, yep. You're gonna need that Vax card if you think you can go out there on the lake. You don't want to get infect the fish.
Yeah, don't be infecting the fish.
Don't get infected fish, and then we're gonna have the fish Rona.
Then we'll need another vaccine for that.
Yeah, you need another vaccine for that. The shrimp Rona. What's next? Lobster Rona.
There you go.
No, what was that, Var?
You look at the screen, you got something sticking up on the computer.
On my computer?
Yeah, I noticed that earlier, that little white thing, like your hidden menu icon.
Must have bumped something on there. Here, let me see what I got here. You're gonna have to go into here and be like, skirt. Get that up out of here.
Yeah, so I think that meeting was very informative. It pissed me off because I couldn't butt in and say shit.
I know, and
Like
some of these people just do not know what the hell they're talking about. I mean, it's just like 2014. I almost pulled an Elvis on my TV when I was watching those hearings. I was on C-SPAN for every single one of them, and I was just pulling what little hair I have left out of my head.
Like,
it was just so.
I could literally see like the corruptness like oozing out of their faces as they were talking.
Yeah.
That's garbage.
Well, we know that Maren Schroeder is on our side. She's a great
Yeah.
person to have on there, man. But
great.
We need more common sense up there, and people that know about what this plan can do, what the potential is. We just take greed out of the equation.
and I don't like to get into the whole black, white, brown thing, but was there any brown people on the committee?
I did not see not one. Not one.
Dang, we're not even represented. Ooh, shit. Yeah, well, I guess it doesn't really matter, I guess. Does it? Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does.
So, yeah, it's a lot of, like you said, Vari, I could, like, watching it, I was like, oh, this is just so corrupt. Everything they're saying just doesn't sound right. Like, we acquired Leafline Labs. They bought their stocks. So, I don't get it. So it's still Leafline Labs, but they own all the stocks.
There's a loophole in the law to get around the law that was put in to make sure that it was Minnesota owned. And they were like, okay, let's pull in a legislator, let's get a lawyer, let's figure out how we can do this. And then the legislator was like, okay, well, if you did it this way, technically
You just change this language.
Technicality on, and then
It's still Leafline Labs, but it's just owned by people out of there. It's Leafline Labs is a Minnesota company.
Who's gonna keep it at my house though?
Right. It's both our bike.
I'm gonna ask this: can you even, if you're if you're card holder, can you even go into a dispensary? Like maybe you want to check it out, see what the store's like. If it maybe it will, if good for you.
I think that would have been a great question to ask those guys, man. I wonder if they're ever going to have something where the public can comment or where the public can ask questions. I haven't seen it.
Oh my God,
Right.
they wouldn't be able to handle it.
No, they'll be fumbling and yeah. And the thing is move my mouse here. It looks like my mouse is on the monitor. There we go. Yeah, the thing is this is the first time they've met since it was started.
Damn.
Since they started it.
Damn.
Doesn't seem right.
Doesn't.
No,
Exactly.
not at all.
6 years. Let's wait 6 years, 7 years for our first meeting. And then
Well, I think they started the task force in 2020, 2019, 2020, I believe it was.
Either way, let's wait a year
So,
for our first meeting.
so it's been 2 years, and then they decided to finally do a meeting, and they broadcasted live on YouTube. So the only way we can view is view, and we can't comment, we can't say anything.
I ain't know, like I had to go find the link for it. I tried to do a Google search for it.
I'm sorry, Vari. I should have sent you the link. I had the link the whole time, and I didn't put it into the chat because I thought I was going to jump up and pull it up. But then when I jumped up to pull it up, it was like, boom, pow, oh, we're live. Vari, the man. Cat.
Not doing anything over here.
It's like I keep trying to get on my laptop.
It's probably warm.
It's funny. Your cat's over there, and my dog is over
all
there.
the time. I gotta sit on my phone.
Marshall is
Are
right
they over
here
there fighting?
right
Like cat and
now.
dog over there fighting. Imagine if you can have your pets in VR with you.
A little
Cats
GoPro
walking
on
all
'em.
around the studio, dog jumping up on the counter. Anyway, you got any words of wisdom for him, Vari? We'll get him up out of here.
Yeah, this room sucks my battery.
Yeah, it's a scary world out there. So always remember, you're your own best advocate. Nobody else can advocate for you other than you or like you. So that we'll see you guys Monday.
Enjoy the weekend.
All right, you guys, we're out of here. Peace. Peace.
Oops.
Music.
I'm just a man on his way to the moon, wishing the rocket would go faster. All the stars remind me of you, yeah they do. I'm on my way to you. I'm just a man on his way to the moon, wishing the rocket would go faster. All the stars remind me of you, yeah they do. I'm on my way to you.
Blue's gonna go over some business stuff.
Here, let me
All right.